Hello and welcome back to the Japan Sim World channel, and today I wanted to do a quick how-to video specifically on setting up the Zuiki Master Controller, or MasCon, shown right here, with any train simulator on the Nintendo Switch made by Sonic Powered. And this was actually in response to a viewer comment. Some of you have actually taken a real interest in some of the games on the channel, and actually have gone out and purchased these games as well as this controller, which is really cool to see. I'm really excited that watching these videos has inspired some of you to try these games out for yourself. These are really fun games, especially if you're into train sims, especially if you're into Japanese train sims. So if you haven't had a chance to check these out, I really recommend doing so. However, the challenge with some of these games, many of them having only been released in Japan, is that everything's in Japanese. And for those outside of Japan who can't read Japanese, it can be a bit of a challenge, particularly when it comes to navigating the menus. And in order to set up the controller with the game, you have to change something in the settings in order to make sure that you can actually use this as opposed to a regular Switch controller such as this right here. So yeah, the main purpose of this video is to show you guys how to set the Master Controller as your main controller for gameplay in these games. So, of course, you want to make sure that your game is compatible with the Zuiki Master Controller. This controller was made for Densha de Go Hashiro Yamanote-sen originally, as you can see right there. However, not all, but most Sonic-powered train sims on the Switch, including all recent Sonic-powered train sims, should have compatibility with this controller as well. And then the way you can tell is if you have a physical game, like this one here. This one's not the same as the game on screen. It's actually a newer release. But again, it's similar. It's made by Sonic-powered. It's similar in style. The way you can tell on the box, if you have a physical copy, is usually on the front. I don't know if I can get a good shot of that here, but on the front, you'll see an image of the controller, or on the back, you'll see that same image. So again, if you have a physical copy, as long as you see that image on the box somewhere, that means that the game is compatible with the controller. Now, the one game that stands out that I know of that isn't compatible is Journey to Kyoto or something. Whichever game has you drive a train in Kyoto. Again, I forgot the exact name of it. I'll post it in the video here. That one is probably the most well-known example that is not compatible with the controller, unfortunately. So, and also that actually is a game that was released outside of Japan on the eShop, but unfortunately that one is not compatible. However, I think there's one other. I can't remember which one. Most of the other Sonic-powered games are. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. It's a fairly straightforward process. It just requires you to know where the settings are. And again, if you can't read Japanese, that may be a challenge to find. So, of course, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your controller is plugged in to the Switch. So this is a USB controller. This is not a wireless controller, so you're going to have to use this when your Switch is docked. This controller won't work if your Switch is in handheld mode or tabletop mode. It has to be docked so that it can be connected to the USB-A ports in the dock. So once it's docked, it's pretty much just plug and play. All you gotta do is plug the controller into an open USB port, and you should be good to go. It's pretty much just plug and play. These buttons will work right out the gate, including in your Switch home menu. The only thing you want to make sure of is that your throttle and brake lever is set to the neutral position, because otherwise in the Switch menu, it'll think that you're pushing the L stick up or down. So this is your center position. You want to make sure that your lever's in your center position when you're navigating the menus. Otherwise, the game may end up scrolling through the menus and you'll be wondering why it's doing that, and you'll be trying to stop it. So just make sure that it's set to neutral. before you proceed. So now from here, we're at the splash menu of the game, so we're going to press A, as it says right there. And so this is kind of where the challenge begins. There is everything here is written in Japanese, so again, if you're unable to read it, you may have a difficult time figuring out, okay, how do I set the controller? Now, right now I can use the controller to navigate, but if I go in game and the controller is not set in the settings, it won't work, because I think the way that this controller is designed is different enough from the Switch controller that they had to program the game to do specific things with this controller, as opposed to, again, something like a Switch Pro controller, which I believe the L stick is what you use for your throttle and brake. I don't remember exactly. Maybe we'll see in the settings there. But anyways, we want to go to settings. And so settings is right here. This button right here. Now, you might be wondering, like, well, if in other games, will this look different? Possibly. What you want to look at are the last two characters. Those last two characters, which I'm highlighting right now, that will generally be where your setting is. In this case, that button says various settings. And so at this point now, we want to look for what they call operation settings, which is the fifth option here. In theory, you could just scroll and eventually you'll find something that looks like a controller. Now, I already have the game set to use the master controller, but if you're playing this game for the first time, most likely it'll be set to something else. So we would press A at operation settings, and then most likely it'll be set to something like this, where it's set to something like a Switch Pro controller, or maybe your Switch Joy-Cons. But basically, yeah, so basically you want to set the control option or the operation to use the Zuiki Master Controller as opposed to a regular controller. Again, this is probably your default setting if you're using it for the first time. So all you have to do at this point, once you press A in that setting, is keep pressing left or right until you see the Zuiki controller. Now, thankfully, there is only one setting for the Zuiki controller. With the Pro controller, there's two different settings, but we don't have to worry about that because we're trying to use the Zuiki controller. The Zuiki controller only has one setting, so all you have to do is pick that, and then press A again. After that, we can exit out with B, and that'll save our setting. And at this point, we should be good to go. From this point on, this is a tutorial mode, so she's going to be giving you a bunch of tips. As I said, for Sonic Power games, you have this graph, which really helps. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this. If you guys want a more detailed tutorial on how to be successful in this game, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll make a separate video for that. Doors to close. And that's it. So, everything is working. Everything's happy. The controller is working. Yeah, there it is. So that's pretty much all there is to it as far as setting it up. It's really just as simple as going to the settings and making sure that the master controller is set to be your main controller. I'll show another example on an older Sonic Power game that looks a little bit different, just in case you're playing a game that may have slightly different settings. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I've got an older Sonic-powered train sim title started up on the Nintendo Switch. And so, as you can see, the menus do look a little bit different. But again, because it's all in Japanese, some may be wondering, well, how do I get to the settings in order to set the controller? So this one works a little bit differently, but it's the same general idea. So again, we want to look for the characters for settings. And as you can see on the bottom, this one just says or settings as opposed to various settings, which is probably what the newer Sonic Power titles say instead. But you can see the last characters for the word settings are there. And so this is where you want to go. Now this one is, again, it's a little bit, it's a little bit less detailed, as you can see. So for a game like this, they may have the option here where you simply have to turn on the controller as opposed to choosing a controller option, which I'm guessing in the newer games, they probably had multiple options for something like a regular controller. In this game, they probably don't. So it's either you have a regular controller, in which case you would set it to off. However, if you want to set the Zuiki controller, you want to use that for your main form of play, you set it to on. And that is pretty much it. So at this point, you press B to quit. It'll save your settings. And then at this point, you can start your game. The other option is, if you really want to go just kind of brute force, like you could choose every option in the menu until you see something that looks like the settings screen. And then from there, go through everything until you find the English word Zuiki, and that is most likely your setting for the controller. The concept is basically the same. The overall concept is you have to tell the game that you want to use the Zuiki controller. That is the general concept. And generally, you'll do it from the settings screen, and there will be an option somewhere to, whoops, I started too early. There will be an option somewhere to allow you to say, to allow you to say, yes, I want to use the Zuiki controller. So again, that's the general concept. Oh, okay, the brakes are there. So that's it. That's pretty much the how-to on setting it up. Like I said, it's fairly straightforward, but again, if you're unable to read Japanese, it can be a little bit of a challenge to find where the setting is. The setting is a little bit hidden away, I will say that. Also, it doesn't automatically set the master controller for gameplay, even if it's plugged in. And so that's kind of interesting. I guess they didn't come up with a way to automatically set that by default, because I figured if you have this plugged in, you want to use it by default. But anyways, that's it. That's the how-to. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And as always, more content to come on Japan Sim World. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.